So let's do part two here. This is new releases, or half new movies from the last year or so, and random stuff, a few documentaries, etc. So let's start with the new ones. Tully, with Charlie's Throne, directed by Jason Reitman. I just saw Thank You for Smoking, which I which I watched because I liked Young Adult quite a bit, and Young Adult is both of those directed by Jason Reitman, and Young Adult is with Charlize Theron as well. And I thought it was good. I thought she was good, and I knew about this, and so I thought that I would pick this up when it came out, and I did. And it's about motherhood. She plays a new mother who realizes that she needs some help with the baby, or she needs, she just doesn't have any time for herself. So this Tully girl or woman comes and helps her, and that's what it's about. It's about their chemistry, and I liked the depiction of motherhood quite a bit. Then it ends in an interesting way. I'm not gonna say more than that. It's as it was one of those things that when I was watching the ending, I wasn't sure if I liked it. And thinking back on it, I don't think I do like it. I think I would have preferred a different ending, but it doesn't make the movie or what came before any worse, I don't think. It's still a really nice film. And here we have a pretty major film, Infinity War, Avengers. So I like buying these on Blu-ray when they come out, whether I've seen them in the movie theater or not, which normally I have, although it's starting to change because I'm getting a little bit tired of them. This one, was great. I mean, I don't think you can be a Marvel fan or a fan of these MCU movies and not like Infinity War. I'm sure you can, but I most people seem to really like this, and I did too. Saw this in the movie theater and had a good time, and I think I pre-ordered the Blu-ray along with which one was it? Well, another one that came out recently, and they weren't that expensive, like $10 or maybe $12, and so that was a pretty good price. And I listened to the commentary and watch the extras, and so I'll add this to the collection now. This one I haven't seen yet, but I wanted to get it. Roman J. Israel Esquire with Denzel Washington, and this right here is why I bought it, mainly from the director of Nightcrawler, although I do like Denzel Washington quite a bit. I thought Nightcrawler I saw that a few years ago. I thought that was incredible. One of my favorite films from the last decade, I would have to say. And just because it's the same director, I wanted to see this. And then, people didn't really like it that much, and he was nominated for an Oscar, actually. But people haven't talked about this too much, and the people who have seen it, they've given it pretty mild reviews, and I don't really know exactly what to expect from it. I just thought that I would buy it because I am curious enough to see it, and there are some extras as well. So, but I am looking forward to his new. I'll probably watch that before I watch this. His new movie. What's his name? I don't want to have to look on the back. Okay, God damn it. Okay, well, whatever. Dan Gilroy, right. I am looking forward to his new movie that comes out on Netflix. I think it's called Velvet Buzzsaw, something like that. I think maybe it was supposed to be released this year, but I think it's possible that it's been delayed until next year, although I'm not sure. I haven't really heard too much about it. But there's quite a few good movies coming out on Netflix finally, after them having had some pretty mediocre sci-fi and some bad teen comedies. It seems like they're finally reaching a point where there's gonna be some good movies coming out. Hopefully, and hopefully this next one will be one of them. I also wanted to pick this one up too. I'll get to that eventually. I do like the people involved. So, Lady Bird. I, obviously knew that this movie had gotten the attention they did. I like it, but she definitely, Greta Gerwig definitely has her own voice with this, I will say. And from what I know about her, it made sense the way the movie was done. But sometimes you just a movie just doesn't get to you, and this one didn't. But it was good. I'll watch it again at some point. I liked that Laurie Metcalf was given a good role. That's cool. I've seen her in a bunch of stuff, and she's always good. She was really great in that episode of Horace and Pete, Louis C.K.'s show that came out a couple of years ago. And she's obviously in Roseanne, which is probably the main thing I know her from. And the Saoirse Ronan is very good. Definitely one of the best young actors today, I think. Yeah, probably she is. Alright. This next one I had been looking forward to like crazy, and it just took me a while to see it. It just took me a while to get it. I was gonna watch The Disaster Artist with my cousin in the movie theater, because we saw The Room together, which I had seen before, and I showed it to her. And then I lent her the book, Disaster Artist, so that she could read that. And so I had to turn her on to the whole Room thing, craze, phenomenon. And she's definitely part of the world now, and we decided to watch this together. And we were gonna watch it in the cinema, but it, I've said this before. I live in I think the city I live in is the 19th largest in Sweden, so not very big. And sometimes the movies that aren't the obvious blockbusters, they don't get showings in my city, which is a shame. This would have been fun to see in the movie theater, but it just never went up here. And I'm not gonna go to a neighboring city, travel half an hour to see it. Or I think the neighboring city is smaller, so we would have had to go even further probably. But anyway, that doesn't really matter. Point is, I got the Blu-ray now, and I'm glad to have seen it. We did watch it together, but I'm not all that crazy about it. I love the fact that they made the film. If you don't know what the Room, if you know what the Room is, then you can understand that I'm not really, I can't really get into it, because it's such a long, fascinating story. But basically, if you don't know, very, very briefly, in 2003, a film called The Room came out, directed, written by, and starring, and other things, directed, written by, and starring Tommy Wiseau, who has since gained a cult following because the film is so bad and he's such a mysterious character. And this reached a point where James Franco, who plays Tommy Wiseau in this film, came out last year. He plays Tommy Wiseau, and the film is about the making of that film, The Room, which came out 15 years ago. And yeah, so obviously James Franco is a big fan of that film as well. I just feel like it was a really nice idea. It's brought a lot more attention, even though people were already talking about Tommy Wiseau. It's brought even more attention to him. We've seen him do so many great, well, I'm not sure if they're great, but so many videos with people talking about whatever, interviews, and he's done appearances, and it's fun to see that. But so that part is good, and there is actually an audio commentary on the Blu-ray with James Franco, Dave Franco, Tommy Wiseau, Greg Sestero, and a couple other people who I don't know. So that was great to see that. It was an odd. It could have been a surreal experience, but I'm so used to Tommy Wiseau being just a very weird guy. You can never get a straight answer from him, and so I feel like there would be very few people who would be more interesting to make a documentary about than him. I mean, imagine actually making a long documentary about him, following him for a couple of years, that kind of thing. But I don't think he would let anything. Either he wouldn't let his guard down because he just seems to refuse to, or he's just too weird. I don't know, but if he would have, if he has the ability or desire to ever change his opinion about, you know, he's not being very honest about certain things, it doesn't seem, then it would be very interesting to explore that in a documentary for sure, because he's one of those people that yeah, anyway, so he is very, very odd. Anyway, okay, so it's fun that the film and all of this stuff has gotten attention, but I feel like the story of The Room is so vivid in our imaginations, and it's so vivid in that part of pop culture by now. So I feel like making a film about it wasn't really necessary. And watching these scenes being played out, it's so weird because I already have the scenes in my head, and they look in the movie, they look the way they do in my head, with the exception that they're played by James Franco instead of Tommy Wiseau, and he does a good job. But it's a bit odd to see him do this, and it's not perfect, and it shouldn't be perfect because it's a film. Some things should be different to make it more cinematic, or they have to be, I suppose. But I feel like it just wasn't quite necessary, and I was trying to make up my mind about that. Like, does this work as a standalone film? Can I separate the two, or can I feel like this is complementing what we already have? And I just can't really, I suppose. I feel like I said, the story of The Room is too big for this to have a kind of impact. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way I felt. So that's my opinion. But it was fun to finally see. Then we have two movies that we'll talk about them one by one, but the next two I just loved, especially this one, I think. This is called The Florida Project. This one was such a beautiful, loving film, like a tribute to childhood in a way, but also a realistic depiction of what some people are living, what life some people are living, and not by any means an escapistic film. Although the ending is sort of a little bit like that. The end, there's something about the ending. I mean, when you have a film about children who they're 6 or 7, especially her, she's sort of the star of the movie. I feel like it's both brave to do that, because I would imagine it's difficult to work with children that age and to find people who can actually do a good job, which she very much did. She was great, and I feel like it's also the skill of the director to find a kind of a fine balance with a film like this, for the children to just be themselves, to just give them certain little pieces of information or direction, so that they can use that, but also just be themselves and bring their own wonderful personality to the scene. And I feel like that's what's happened here. And I feel like Sean Baker, who made a film before called Tangerine, which I haven't seen, which I of course want to see now. He did a really good job behind the camera for this one, even though a lot of it is just sort of slice of life, just scenes played out. But I think it's it's just a wonderful film, and the ending made me so happy, and so almost a slight euphoric ending. really wonderful movie, and Willem Dafoe is great, and I like that even though he's sort of like a big name, a big star, it never really becomes about him. He's just there to help in a way, help the characters and help the movie. He never takes over in a cliched way or whatever. It just worked really well. This is one that I want to return to. And the next one is also one that I want to return to, largely because of the ending. It's one of those movies that the ending, it was so good and so unusual. It put a perspective. It made you reflect over the film, what you just seen, and it made me want to watch that again. Call Me By Your Name. This one I liked quite a bit all the way through, but it's when an ending like that can really bring it all together and, like I said, make you reflect over what you've just seen. That's everything I can ask for in a movie. Not saying it's one of my favorite films of all time, but there's some shit on here. But yeah, just a really great film. Timothée Chalamet, I don't think I mean he was in Lady Bird, but I don't think I've seen him in too many other movies. Yeah, and this guy Luca Guadagnino has directed the new Suspiria movie, which is a bit surprising in terms of the differences of that and this. But I'm looking forward to that. But there's also talk, apparently of a sequel to this, which again, because of the end, makes sense to me. It does make sense, and it doesn't matter if it takes a few years, and the characters have aged a few years. That would almost make even more sense. Yeah, this one was great. I really would like to watch this again. Is there a commentary for this? There is, but it's with the actors. I would have liked the commentary maybe with the director. I would have listened to that. Actors' commentaries they can be good, but anyway. So that was, deserving of all the praise as well. This next one is also deserving of the praise it's getting, but it's one of those that seems to me has gone under the radar. And then when people actually do talk about it, they do so very lovingly. Is maybe, I don't know if that's the right word for a film like this, although I guess it doesn't matter what the film is about, you can still talk about it lovingly, I guess. Anyway, but it is a very dark film, is what I'm saying, and one that, well, you can see from the cover that it's sort of, well, he plays a priest, Ethan Hawke, who's great. Liked him for a while now, and there is this battle between light and darkness, but I feel like there's more than that too. It's hard to talk about. I definitely it's one to think about for sure, but it's a really well written film by Paul Schrader, who have directed films for a long time. I recently saw Blue Collar, which he directed in the 70s, and some people call this his best film, which is very unusual so late in someone's career to make a film which is this good, I suppose. At least when they maybe haven't made a film of that quality in a while. But this is great, and Cedric the Entertainer is in this. I was surprised to see that it says Cedric Kyles, which I believe, according to IMDb, is the first time he's used his real name for a film, and he made perfect sense in the movie. But I was not expecting to see Cedric the Entertainer in First Reformed, but he did really well. There is a Build series interview with Ethan Hawke and Cedric Kyles, and maybe Paul Schrader as well, I'm not too sure. So I want to listen to that. That should be really interesting. This is one of those films that I can't just watch it and just leave it. I have to read about it and listen to interviews if I can find clips and stuff like that, and it's really good. It just draws you in from the first scene. It has this throughout the film. It has this feeling of unease, and already from the first shot, which is like a very slow moving shot of a church. So go figure. But yeah, really well done. Next one is this is the last like new Blu-ray for this update, and it's a Swedish film. It's called Tårtgeneralen, The Cake General, I believe the English title is, and that's the translation as well. I could talk easily for 10 minutes about this. I'll just say very briefly that it's a Swedish film about, or by, these two directors. You can see their names here. And before this, they're in their early to mid 40s. They've made documentaries, kind of comedic documentary TV shows or reality shows for about 15 years, and I've followed them basically since the very beginning. Me and my mom would watch their early shows on TV together, and they're pretty inappropriate at times, but we would watch them together. And ever since, I've followed whatever they've done, I've seen. Right now they've done a kind of news show. It's called Breaking News, which they bring up kind of big news, but also kind of ridiculous news, which is their style. Because they've always focused on the eccentric part of life. What their shows has always been about is finding eccentric people and finding their quirks, finding what makes them wonderful and special, and just taking it from there. And they have met so many great people over the years, just hundreds of great interviews with people that are usually not given any room to speak. And they do really well in that genre, and I love things like that, and so I've always liked following them. And they've done other stuff too, but that is the sort of common thread between their, or throughout their careers. I feel like they like finding those people, and when they're out filming something and they bump into somebody that they can see that there's something special about this person, they wanna talk more to that person, and they're gonna go ahead of out of their way or whatever to get an interview with that person. And this film is sort of, it makes sense that they make a film like this. It starts with a collection or a presentation of the characters in this town that the movie takes place in, which it's actually autobiographical. Philip, there's a character who plays him as a child, where he actually grew up, the city where he grew up. And so it's about all these wonderful, odd people who live in this city, small city. And the main character is played by Mikael Persbrandt, who is based on a real character, a real person. And you know, it feels cliche about Mikael Persbrandt. It's easy to mention The Hobbit. If you're not from Sweden, you've probably seen him in that. He played Bjorn. But yeah, so he plays the main role. And then generally a really good film. And there's a commentary which I really like listening to. They have such great chemistry. Obviously, they've worked together for a long time. They do a podcast, so I knew that the commentary was gonna be brilliant, and it definitely is. So really good movie, and it's cool that they made a film, actually directed a film, because they haven't done that before. Okay, now we have some random stuff. First off, Pong, the animation. So this I bought because it's, I'm sure there are many people involved, but it seems to be mainly by, it says here, director Masaki Yuasa. Anyway, I recently talked about a film called Mind Game, which he directed. Sorry about that. And I talked about how much I liked that in my last update, I believe it was. And I had to keep exploring his work, because it was unlike anything that I'd seen, and it was absolutely incredible, a new favorite. And so I bought this, which is by him as well, which I had seen before. I had seen the cover before, and remember thinking that this looks awful. This looks really boring. What the hell is this? And then, you know, a few months later, or a year later, whatever, that turns into, holy shit, this is like the thing I want to see most of all right now. And it actually took me a while to find the right time to see it when I had received it. But it is absolutely amazing. Just like Mind Game, it really shows what animation is capable of. Although this is more focused on the characters, on the people involved, and not about the actual animation as much. There are definitely experimentation, which only animation allows, but it's more about the actual characters. And Ping Pong is just a vehicle to explore some of these ideas that the show explores. But at the same time, it's a really nice ambience. The sound of the ping pong, you can imagine the background ambience of all the ping pong rackets playing. So there's that, and then it's just a way for characters to gather, and it's a way to maybe be creative with animation, perhaps. Anyway, it's just a brilliant series, which unfortunately I did see that this go out of print. This edition did. If you want to see it, I don't know if there's another edition coming out. They usually do that. They release a limited or a collector's edition and a standard edition, but they haven't done that for this. But I would imagine that they would do that eventually. So if you just wait, maybe they'll do that, because this is great. Then we have a documentary. We'll talk about a few documentaries next. This is Woodstock, 3 Days of Peace and Music. We all know what Woodstock is. I don't need to talk about that. You can see some of the bands and artists who played here. And this is the director's cut, Ultimate Collector's Edition. I've wanted to see this for a while. Remember I talked to my uncle about this about 4 years ago. And I wanted to see it then, but sometimes it just takes you a while, I guess. He's a huge movie fan, a huge music fan. Like he knows more about music than anyone I know. And yeah, so this is I think it might be the 40th anniversary. There is also a 45th anniversary on Blu-ray, which has even more extras, but this is a phenomenal release as it is. And of course next year is the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, so maybe there will be a 50th anniversary. I'll wait until then and pick that up if it comes out. Otherwise I'm gonna have to upgrade to the 45th anniversary at some point. But the movie, it documents Woodstock, and what's so cool about it is it's not a looking back kind of thing. They started filming the documentary before they knew that Woodstock was going to be Woodstock, and so you see the whole thing play out, and it's everything you ever wanted. If you're interested in Woodstock, if you want to see what it was like. Well, I don't know if people know about this documentary. I don't know how many people know about it. Maybe it's more famous than I realize, the film. But if you are interested in Woodstock, and if you haven't seen this, well then this is your film. It really documents the festival very, very well. And it shows, sometimes or often actually, it shows two images side by side, which makes perfect sense to do that, although I wish they would have done it a little bit more with the actual performances. Now I understand that they want to give the artists room to play and to give that the focus, but sometimes I would have maybe liked to see the audience a bit more. And I don't know if they filmed the audience during the gigs. Maybe they didn't film them that much. I don't know. But it would have made sense to have more shots of the audience while also watching the music. Most of the side-by-sides, they are outside of the music, so to speak, or the music is in the background, but outside of the gigs. But really wonderful documentary, and good extras as well. And yeah, so that was really fun. And we have more documentaries here, quite a few actually. So we shall continue with those. This one is once again in this update. I want to talk more about this, but it's then what I'll be able to. But it's The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence. This one came out first, although they filmed this before this came out, because when it documents the Indonesian, the genocide in Indonesia of communists, or perhaps so-called communists in some cases, or a lot of cases, I don't know, which happened in the mid-60s. The Act of Killing documents that, and The Look of Silence documents that, but in very different ways. And the reason why they filmed both before releasing any of them, or maybe it would have happened like that anyway. But Joshua Oppenheimer, he can't really go back there now, because the situation is, or at least it was, you know, the most in the most recent interview that I've listened to, this was still the case. And I honestly haven't read up on what happens or I honestly don't know if the situation today, 2018, is the same or not. But it was a few years ago, and that situation is that the government who ordered the killings, basically, they're still in power. And so after the release of the film, if he were to go back, he believes that he would have a hard time getting out again. And so releasing The Act of Killing and going back to film Look of Silence would have maybe not worked. But he was there for a good 10-11 years, I think, and filmed, talked to people, perpetrators a lot of the time, people who had been ordered to do these killings. And it was basically, I don't know if an open secret, if that term can be applied, but it was something that a lot of people knew about, and a lot of people are denying that they knew about it. Or maybe the actual the actual killers aren't denying it, but some of the people surrounding the killers, or other people who might have known about it, they especially in this one, The Look of Silence, they're gonna tell you that I didn't know about that, while maybe they did. But yeah, it's hard to know what exactly to say, more than to talk about the situation. And that's the situation. The films themselves, especially Act of Killing, is very difficult to describe if you haven't seen it. And I suggest that you watch it. I suggest that you buy this Blu-ray set from Dogwoof, actually, because it's gonna give you an education on Indonesia, first of all, and that's important for everyone to know as much as they can about everything, isn't it? So if you don't know about that, which I didn't, I'd seen this before, Act of Killing I had seen before. It had been a few years, and I didn't really remember. I remembered what the film was about, but I didn't remember that it was in Indonesia, for example. So, but it also gives you so much content for the price. I paid £7 for this from Amazon UK, and I've seen it even cheaper before. Maybe there's a point in it being so cheap, I don't know. Dogwoof, I believe, distributed the films, not just like this, but in cinemas as well. I think so, anyway. And I believe they're available for free to watch online. Joshua Oppenheimer said so in one clip. And so maybe they made a point of making this affordable. I'm not sure, because it is important to know about this. yeah, like I said, the approach that the documentaries take are very different, but they complement each other very nicely. So if you haven't bought that, then you really have no excuse not to buy it. Basically, is what I'm saying. No, but it's it is some brilliant documentary filmmaking, and yeah. That anyway. The next one, Cave of Forgotten Dreams, Werner Herzog. So I've been a fan of his documentaries for quite a while. I am working my way through the BFI Blu-ray box set as we speak, and I'm gonna come back when I've finished it and talk about the movies, and just more about him in general, I guess. But I will mention that before rewatching some of those movies and watching some for the first time, I didn't consider myself a huge fan of his movies, his live-action movies. However, I was a big fan of his documentaries. That's now changed. I'm now quite a fan of his films overall, and like I said, I'll come back later on to talk about that. So I do have a few more movies left. But this I always knew about. It took me a while to get it. It was sort of always kind of expensive, but I found a pretty good price now. His approach to documentaries is always unique, Werner Herzog's approach. He has a tendency of making his films feel slightly surreal in a way, which only he seems to be able to. This film is about a cave with cave drawings. What's the expression exactly? Maybe it's on the back here. Cave paintings, according to the back. Okay, well, whatever. It's about, you know, a group of explorers. I believe in the 90s they found this cave, which turned out to house the oldest known examples of cave paintings. I mean, they're so old that at least I feel like it's hard to sort of gain a perspective on exactly how old it is. 30,000 years is how old supposedly the paintings are, and they are very well kept, or they don't look. I mean, they don't look like they're that old. It's just quite amazing that something that happened that long ago is still here to view. I mean, it's one thing to read about the ephemeral nature of everything, read about what has happened in the past, but when you are actually presented with the actual evidence right in front of you, like a cave drawing, something which happened so long ago, 30,000 years ago. At one point, this was not part of the past. At one point, this actually happened. This was a scene that played out at one, you know, at some point. And that's a fascinating thought to me. That first of all, what time does to a scene. The passage of time. It's hard to fake. You know when you've seen something that is old, which is actually old. You know, but also, like what I said, it's I like thinking back or fantasizing about that, but thinking about that moment when these drawings were actually drawn, when they were freshly painted. Because now it's so long ago because now it's so long ago that it's hard to think of it as anything than that. It's just ancient, but it hasn't always been, because at one point they went into the cave and they made the paintings. And what if you could be a fly on the wall when they did that? Anyway, so it's a fascinating subject. Time in general is fascinating, and yeah, it's you know, it's another Werner Herzog documentary to watch, and it's a good one. The next one is called Film Worker. I believe I heard about this on the Leonard Maltin podcast. and it's about Stanley Kubrick's, I'll just read the bottom, Stanley Kubrick's unsung assistant, a man named, I don't want to have to look on the back, Leon Vitali. Leon Vitali. He was a promising actor who, he was in Barry Lyndon, Kubrick's film, which I haven't seen. That's the main Kubrick film that I haven't seen, which I'd like to see. There's a few that I haven't seen, but I'd really like to see that, which I haven't, but I'm sure I will. Here's him more recently. That's obviously him a few decades ago, and this is him now. And he was in Barry Lyndon, and Stanley Kubrick, he took a liking to him, I guess. And Leon, he took a liking to Stanley, to say the least. He was already a big fan. He had seen 2001, and he thought that was the best film he'd ever seen. I tend to agree with him. And he was so taken by Kubrick's genius and his person that he decided to drop his own acting career and work as his assistant, as Kubrick's assistant. A completely unselfish move. It's well, I guess everything is selfish in some way, but he sacrificed his acting career in order to work largely uncredited, I think. If you go on his IMDb page, it's pretty, the amount of work that the documentary lets you know that he did for Stanley Kubrick is what's represented of that on IMDb is a pathetic representation. I mean, and he apparently doesn't have a lot of money today, or he didn't when they made the film. I mean, he should. It seems like he deserves more for what he did, because he did do a lot. He worked on everything, from you know, maybe even direction, or maybe not direction, but he was his first hand, you know. So he worked on all kinds of things, large things to the small things. He worked on DVD releases, maybe like the layout of the artwork for the DVD, whatever. Anyway, of course, Stanley Kubrick died a while ago now, and but he worked with him until the end, and has been supervising various Kubrick-related things since then. And I'm not giving the documentary justice. It's a good film, which felt to me to be it had a kind of independent feel. It didn't feel like an extremely well produced documentary, although it is very good, and it's very touching towards the end. And I have to mention one thing too. There's an actress in Sweden called Vera Vitali, who turned out to be his daughter. She is interviewed in the film, and I realized very quickly that, oh shit, she's his daughter. Of course she is. They have the same last name. Anyway, and so he had been in Sweden, and so they talked about that a bit. But that was fun to see her, because she's quite a good actress, or she's a really good actress. And yeah, but good documentary, which of course, if you're a Kubrick fan, you should probably see. And I got a couple documentaries by Nicolas Philibert, French filmmaker, In the Land of the Deaf, and this one is called, what's the English title? To Be and To Have? Yeah, well, that's the translation of the Swedish title as well. Two documentaries. This is released by Second Run, which is a company I like, and this one I had from before, so I watched this after. And two quite good documentaries. I wasn't the biggest fan of either of them, but I thought they were quite good. Then I got this also, Joanna Lumley's Japan. So you've maybe seen me pick up some of these before. I do like my traveling documentaries, and this might be my favorite of hers that I've seen so far. I still have the India one that I haven't seen, and the Greece one, and yeah, I'm enjoying them. Working my way through those. We have a few foreign films here. Yoyo, film by Yilmaz Güney, Turkish film. A film so controversial that it was totally forbidden in its home country. So I should have looked up the story behind this. I was meaning to do that, but then I guess I forgot. But I believe that the director, he was in prison while he directed the film. Now how does that happen? Well, I guess he had prison visitors coming to see him, assistants working for the film, on the film, or one assistant who directed the film for him. But he essentially directed the film from inside prison. He obviously couldn't leave, and so he would, I guess, meet up with this assistant in prison, or his worker. He would give instructions, he would get updates on how the film was going, and the film was made under his supervision from afar, in a way. So he directed it from prison, and then I believe he escaped from prison. I remember hearing about this, you know, during the film course I took. It was fascinating stuff, but I believe he might have escaped after a while. But this film, anyway, was the result of that prison period, or yeah. I will admit that I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why, but I had a hard time following it. There were a couple things that made me more confused than what they perhaps should have. Just the way the story was presented, the way the characters were presented, the way it cut back and forth between some stuff, that made me really confused, and I was for that reason obviously not enjoying it very much. There are a few good scenes that I like, just you know, viewing them on their own, just as well shot scenes or nice looking scenes or whatever. But the editing seemed a bit off to me, and the pacing, but it could have been me as well. I don't, you know. Anyway, what I can say about the way it was filmed is that I didn't like the look of it. Part of that, I guess, maybe comes down to the editing, but also the framing of some shots, the way some of these scenes played out. It could, of course, come down to the fact that he wasn't there himself, and so some scenes maybe weren't directed the way he would have directed them. I don't know, but I feel like maybe the editing, if he escaped, then maybe he had control of the editing. I don't know. Anyway, it was probably me, but I didn't really fully get it. This is an Iranian film by Jafar Panahi, screenplay by Abbas Kiarostami. Alright, yeah, I do remember seeing that actually. So, Crimson Gold is a film by, well, I talked about Jafar Panahi in my latest series of updates as well, in the foreign film section, where I mentioned that he was banned from making films for a while. He was put under house arrest, and then he made a couple of films anyway after that, and it's a long story, but I hadn't seen any of the films he made before the ban. Iranian films have quite, well, there are restrictions for what you can do, and he broke those rules, and so he was banned. But this is a film he made before that ban, so I had been curious to see whatever he made before, and this was cheap, so I bought this, and I want to see more of them, but I can't find more of them for the same price, and I like to wait until the price go down, because I must have saved, I don't know how much money I've saved doing that over the years, but it's a good way to save money, I think, but sometimes you do need to wait. to watch the film you want to see. Anyway, this one was really good. I liked this quite a bit, and I especially like the end, or the last scene, which takes place on this penthouse, extremely luxurious flat. And I guess the film is political, and I don't know if that's what if this film was enough motivation to ban him, or if this was just one in a series, or in one film in a series of films where he had dealt with topics that were a bit taboo in Iran, or forbidden to talk about. But you can see, I guess, what he did in this film, which they may have had problems with. It does critique classes, and that's sort of what that last scene is about. But that's not necessarily why I like the last scene. It was just such a well played out scene there at the end, and but overall the film is anyway, the film is great. Okay, so I think we're gonna have to leave it at that. I do have a few more, but I get this feeling that I've lost some momentum here, so I'm gonna have to recharge my batteries and come back later with those in the next one. So until then, thank you very much for watching, and I always appreciate it, and there will be more videos eventually.